to day 2 of the 10th World Championship here at IeSF. My name is Superman. I'm joined here by Jimmy Preacher Fu.
Mate, you got it. You got my name. And more importantly, we got some amazing action today. Look, we only got a taste of it yesterday with one game, but that blew us out of the water, and I cannot wait for that to continue.
Yeah, Chinese Taipei's performance yesterday was a doozy. It's definitely something you'd want to check out in a VOD. And today we've got a best-of-3 tiebreaker from Group H here between Sweden and Russia. They're sitting up on stage behind us. We'll get right into that match shortly.
I mean, that Frozen North matchup, we are definitely looking forward to it. Both of those two regions have been known to produce very strong players. Of course, it goes without saying that in the TCL, they've done so well for themselves. I mean, if you take a look at the Worlds run, they managed to really take it towards their groups. The Gambit taking Cloud9 to a best-of-5, game number 5. So they've got a lot to prove here.
Yeah, a lot to prove is the case. And I gotta say, Jimmy, I'm very much looking forward to these two teams in particular, and now that we get a best-of-3, up to 3 games, we can see a little bit more of the evolution of what we could call the meta here in Kaohsiung, because we didn't really get too much of a taste of it with just the stomp yesterday.
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of one-sided. Hopefully we're looking for something different here. The thing that I really love about best-of-3 as opposed to best-of-1s is it's not so much about the tournament meta, it's about the individual meta inside the series itself. You see players coming out with their comfort picks. Next game, we found it out. Guess what? Because we just played that game, we can now ban it out. But the downside to that is then you just leave open a generic OP that might just slip through the cracks. And if we see that on the Rift today, then we are definitely in for a treat and a half.
Yeah, absolutely. We get to see those teams define their own personalities in some of those picks. You can see in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen, that's the matchup we're watching. This break. This part of the bracket here is Sweden versus Russia. It's a best-of-3 to see who move on to then the quarterfinals of this set.
And look, both of these two teams, when you talk about Sweden, you have to say the Nordics have produced a lot of immense talent inside of esports, most notably in CSGO, because of course they provide a whole lot of good teams to funnel into their leagues. But if they could translate their skill over, and they can also translate their resources over into League of Legends, then they might see a resurgent dominance in pretty much every area.
And I'm really excited to see if we'll get more OP picks in the top lane. We did see the Victor come through in the early draft. They swapped that Rengar to the top lane. Chinese Taipei just showed that they're willing to take those heavy risks in a solo lane, and it paid off huge for them yesterday.
It might just be the preparation as well, Superman, because to have a Rengar pocket pick, to bait out the Victor very early on and to say, we know exactly how to counter this, and we can also bait you into thinking that it's a jungle pick. These guys have practiced it, and they've practiced it 100 times. When there is an OP pick like Victor, the first thing that your mind has to do is say, let's try literally every single champion into it and see which one wrecks it the hardest.
Well, it seemed to work out for them yesterday, but today we've got Sweden versus Russia. What do you want to see out of the top lane in particular?
I mean, is it a little bit cheesy to say that I want to see something more standard like the Urgot Aatrox matchup? I actually really love it. Look,
yeah.
you can argue with me, but I'm going to tell you right now, I actually am a huge fan of that matchup because it is skill on both sides, and whoever outplays, whoever presses R at the correct time, does actually manage to get the lead.
I'll take the bait, Preacher. I'm going to say it's a little bit of a snooze fest when we see that matchup. Yes, it can swing one way or the other, but it's up to the junglers. They've got to come up to that lane, show their prowess on things like the Gragas we saw yesterday. Maybe those early game Lee Sins might come out. I just want to see something explosive, and I worry that if we get the Aatrox versus Urgot top lane, nobody will have the confidence to take some risks.
Are you kidding me? I mean, Aatrox, we've already seen what can happen if you remember back to the group stages of Worlds, the Shy, IG. He teleported down level 3 Aatrox, and he just did like a 4-man knock-up with his third Q. So there is no way that you can say these guys would not be looking for some action all around. I mean, you might be thinking that it's a snooze fest, but my eye's going to be glued onto the top.
Well, I just worry with the lights, the cameras, this big stage behind us, Preacher, that it might be intimidating to some of these players. So, these are not the EULCS, the NALCS, LCK, LPL, LMS. These are not the players from those. These are the next best. So they may not have had the experience of playing on such a massive stage with all the lights and the massive arena here filled with fans that'll be screaming as they get these kills. It might be a little intimidating and make them a little timid.
I mean, you definitely hit it on the mark there, right? You said experience. It is all about that. And if this is the first time you're on a stage, you're in front of a crowd, and you're even being casted, you know, that is a whole lot of pressure on your shoulders that you might not have experienced. But these guys, they have to learn very quickly, because in a best of 3, you do not have much leeway. You give up one game and all of a sudden your back is to the wall.
It definitely is the case, and that's a scary position to be. This early on in the tournament, most of these teams are thinking, oh, we have a pretty good shot to at least make quarters, maybe even semis, because we're so confident in our play, maybe scrimming some other teams beforehand. And I mean, many of these regions even had their own qualifiers to bring the best possible from their country. So it'll be curious to see who will actually be willing to step up on the big stage, who will take those risks, like the Rankar pick we saw yesterday that came up huge for Chinese Taipei.
Let me tell you one thing. I meet a lot of these players in breakfast and also just walking around the venue, and you just pass them in the corridor. I ask them, how do you feel coming into this matchup? And 100% of the time, without a doubt, they always say, I reckon we got this. I reckon we're the better team. I reckon that we could even win the entire tournament. There is no way that you can even make it past your national qualifiers without having that level of confidence. So the fact that all of these guys are going to be clashing head-to-head with that brimming confidence, I mean, I hardly doubt that it's going to be a snooze fest anywhere.
That's the hope, at least, Preacher. And I actually do hope that we don't have a snooze fest. I just worry that maybe the timidness will come through. But all right, Sweden versus Russia.
Here we go.
This has got to be
this is it.
Anything but a snooze fest, because Sweden is one of those favorites to make it at least to the semifinals out of this. And Russia, they've shown up huge in groups.
Yeah, of course. I think it's the most dominant thing about the Russian team is the fact that they play so well in terms of communication. It almost feels as if they don't talk to each other. They're just somehow linked mentally, and they just make the same plays in absolute unison. It's a little bit scary, quite frankly. If I saw that coming into a flex game, I'd be like FF15, because, yeah, there's very little chance that you can recover from that. And when you're talking about such an early game meta, like Season 8 in general, then that could be extremely punishing if you fall behind by even 5 or 10 minutes to a massive enough gold lead.
What kind of gold lead would you be looking at then? Are we talking 5,000 up to 10,000 by 15 minutes like Chinese Taipei had yesterday?
Come on. I think that's a little bit... That is an outlier.
Yeah.
I will say that right now. That is an outlier, Superman. I don't think we'd be expecting to see that today, but if they manage to get more than a 3K gold lead by 10 minutes, I would seriously be sweating for either of these two teams, because that is really the breakaway point at which you say, we can't defend our turrets anymore. We can't even hold on to our turrets because they can just hard dive us without even losing any members. And yeah, that would definitely be the point at which people really need to flip the switch and start pressing the attacks.
You mentioned towers, Preacher, and I think that's precisely the story we saw evolving yesterday, where towers just seem to disappear from the map, even in spirit. If there is a structure still standing there, Chinese Taipei was willing to dive and dive and dive over and over again with a massive gold lead. So when you mention, if there's a small gold lead brewing in that early game, those towers might just begin to disappear, and those are just standing gold that just goes straight into the pockets of whichever team begins to break them down. But here we are in Champion Select. I want to see those early game junglers just get out of here, because then we can see maybe some scaling picks.
That is definitely what we need to look at. Both the Gragas and the Lee Sin yesterday were massive. I mean, the Xin Zhao, sorry, yesterday were massive in the early game. I mean, if you give enough gold onto your junglers, we saw that they get absolute pressure onto the map. There was a Rift Herald compared to a Dragon Tank. The Rift Herald obviously came out ahead. If you can get pressure on that simply from your gold lead, then that could just topple your enemies before they can even react.
That's true. And we mentioned the Gragas, the Camille yesterday we talked about in Champions, like also taken away. There's a lot of early game to mid game initiation tools that are already gone.
But, Xin Zhao and Lee Sin is still available. Both of those two champs are extremely strong in the early game. I wouldn't even be surprised if that was like a first pick. I mean, it's very difficult to even counter that in terms of a counter on Sweden's side. So, Russia getting the favorites on blue side. They could pick up something very strong for themselves. The last band, if it's not a Xin, could be up.
And Lovers Duo still available. We'll see if Russia decides to go for maybe the Xayah or Rakan first pick.
Definitely.
Rakan is just a fantastic champion. We talk about those initiation tools. What better than quickness with Grand Entry?
You don't even need to think about it. I mean, if both of those two champs are up, you sort of got to break them up in the first rotation, because if you don't, then that is just going to be a devastating bottom lane. I mean, Temp Name and Vada, they did so well for themselves. Temp Name, of course, coming from last year's tournament, doing such huge work, carrying his entire team on his back. It's not easy, because Mother Russia is very big.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, this does leave open the Braum Lucian that's been so strong evolving in the recent Season 8 meta, but this means Xayah's still open for the side of Russia.
That's exactly what I was going to hit on. This is so dangerous coming in. Maybe Sweden read this incorrectly. It is still available, and more to the point, Russia, they can just pick up such a strong double pick in both the Xayah and also the Xin Zhao, because if you can make some play down into the bottom lane very early on, there's very little that stands in the way. And of course, reading it like a book, that's exactly what they're looking at.
Yeah, and I then do expect that Sweden will have to take that Braum or something of that nature before it just disappears into the second ban phase.
Yeah, this kind of looks a little bit too dangerous coming in from Sweden. They just got outdrafted, and they don't even get their counter picks here, because usually what happens if you pick red side very early on is you at least want to counter your mid lane, but the very early Lissandra, here we go. This could be the making of something that's very, very dangerous.
Well, there's going to be that Braum, but very surprised by this Aatrox pick, either for token or difference in mid or top. I'm not actually certain where it will end up because it really depends on where Sweden decides to put that Lissandra.
It does, because Aatrox actually does pretty well into Lissandra. You know, his Q1 and Q2 have extremely long range. It can actually hit her while she's trying to CS, while she's just trying to poke you out. And it's a lot of trading when it comes down to the Aatrox. A huge surprise for me in the first rotation is that nobody put any priority onto jungles. Sure, there were a couple of bans, but nobody even hovered a pick. And that might be really, really scary coming in for the side of Russia, because first pick coming straight out of the second ban phase goes towards Sweden. If they decide to ban out the jungle, they could just get their pickings and leave Russia dry.
See if that's exactly what they go for. I am much more curious about this matchup between Aatrox and Lissandra. I want you to talk to me a little bit more about it, Preacher, because it seems that Aatrox would definitely have the advantage there with such a large trading window. Even through the aftershock tankiness that normally that Lissandra would provide herself, it seems like that just becomes negated.
I mean, she can't even get it off realistically, because she needs to get within range to use a W. If she walks that close and she gets inside range for Q3, nobody wants to do that into an Aatrox. So it's a sort of catch-22 where you can't even proc it, and it's just a very dangerous matchup all in all. I don't really know what you want me to say about it here, Superman. It is a dangerous, dangerous matchup for the Lissandra.
It sure is. So Sweden seems to be on the back foot. Wow, that is an aggressive pick for the jungle.
And without hesitation, they just immediately lock it in. What do you want? I want Kaohsiung. Lock it in for me. This guy, he knows that he wants to go aggressive. If there were any champion that could actually complement these lanes so far, it would be something aggressive, like maybe Lee Sin or the Kaohsiungs in this instance. I mean, you got so much CC in the bottom lane with Braum passive. You got a lockdown that's pretty much more or less permanent with Lissandra's ultimate. So if you bring a lot of damage to suit that, then you could get yourself ahead.
Wow, and they're going to lock in the Skarner. That's quite curious because that's not the best matchup.
No.
If you do have those Spires, of course, Skarner is going to outtrade anyone. But without those Spires, the isolation damage in that river could be huge for the Kazakhs.
Yeah, I'm really surprised that Russia's focusing so much towards the late game. It kind of looks as if they don't actually have an early game bridge to get them towards that. Of course, their lanes do naturally win, but without a bridge to get them towards the late game, they might find themselves high and dry if Sweden capitalize by moving their jungler all around the map, by getting the reverse advantage for themselves. Skarner, on the other hand, cannot even really counter gank in most situations, even if he is around. So it has to be a very, very careful play all around the map.
Yeah, I gotta say, Preacher, this is turning out to be what I might describe as a muted win lane win game kind for Russia, where Sweden might have that edge come mid-game to open up the map with the Kazakhs. If they get that mid lane turret, for example, that'll open up the jungle so much more for isolation kills in the jungle, maybe those invades, or the aggressive Braum Lucian to roam along with that jungler and take control of, say, bot side jungle.
Yeah, and also the fact that wards are so scarce in this meta, it means that Kaohsiung can't be spotted out. If he ranks his ultimate first or second, it means that he'll just be running rampant around the entire map. But we're getting a little bit ahead of ourselves because we're thinking that mid lane turret has already fell. It's still very early days. Of course, we did mention that the lanes did heavily favor the Russian side. So if that manages to go ahead organically and naturally without any sort of response from Sweden, then this could be very dangerous.
Yeah, I see it just so curious, that Skarner pick again, though, Preacher, that with such heavy pushing lanes, so strong laning on the side of Russia that they go for not the strongest of early game junglers by any means.
Of course, there's no focus on early game at all from this jungle pickup. I mean, the only synergy that you can sort of see in the mid game would be Aatrox's W. It pulls somebody back, and then Skarner gets into a very good position running forward. But once you get to the ultra late game, once there are dashes all around from the Lucian, from the Lissandra as well, it's very hard to lock anybody down with Aatrox chains. So I'm kind of struggling as to think which person is actually going to be the target of that. And if nobody's going to be the target of that, how's Skarner meant to get his ulti off in the first place?
maybe just the Braum. You negate the front line, and then you just mow over the rest of the team. But I think that kind of strategy requires a massive early lead, and maybe that's the lanes they drafted
It's
for.
a divide and conquer strategy. You open a little window, you pull one in, and then once you've dealt with him, then you deal with the rest, right?
I mean, Braum says, stand behind Braum. And if you take him out of there, there's no one to stand behind anymore.
Admittedly, that is a very easy strategy because tank supports are not actually that tanky when you take a look at the raw numbers. If they miss one of their crucial disengages, then they get more or less one shot inside of a team fight. It's very counterintuitive, but the items they build right now are not that tanky. So if he gets caught out, he might be like any other champion, just without the damage to really fend for himself.
Yeah, we're at that kind of meta where we're almost back to Season 3 days, where all supports do is buy those wards, where they just have to build up the vision that's otherwise lacking from the map.
I mean, but how do you even do that? It's so difficult to purchase wards. You practically don't get it until at least around the 15-minute mark is really average inside a competitive play. So all of these people, they have to be watching the map, and they have to sort of be predicting as well. There are two ways that you can really take the jungle. You can either say, he could really be anywhere, so all three lanes play safe, or you could say, the jungler can theoretically only be in in one place, so all lanes play very aggressive.
I think that's the strategy that Rush is going for. Just all lanes play aggressive and hope that that gives zero window for Kaohsiung to just look for those plays, because you never know where the Skarner could be, sitting in a brush in those longer lanes or just getting full control of the river, because those spires give him so much move speed.
Jungle 10 also has to be very careful in terms of how he parts, because sure, he can go aggressive, and sure, he can win a 1v1, but if he fights inside of those spires that you mentioned, then it's going to be more or less swung towards the side of the Skarner in a very even 1v1. So he needs to pick his fights. He needs to make sure that if he invades and he sees a Spire is heavily captured by Skarner and he doesn't know where the solo laners are, that he just needs to back out of there, because if he doesn't, he's going to get heavily collapsed on.
That's an excellent point, Preacher, and I'd say he's listening closely to you, because Jungle 10's decided to go for the heavy clear, taking a lot of damage early. That means he won't get spotted out until about now, entering that river, looking for that Scuttle Crab, and of course, getting those Dark Harvest stacks to stack up early.
Yeah, he's also playing towards his aggressive side to make sure that there is no real response coming out from the Kazakhs. You can already see that Aatrox is pushed in very heavily towards the Rise. That gives him so much room to breathe, even though there is a ward that spots him out. And conversely, the exact same thing is happening on the bottom side. If you take a look at the mini-map, Sweden's bottom lane is pushing in very heavily, providing a lot of security over for their jungler, but it also gives information as to roughly where they are.
Yeah, seems pretty quiet from the jungler so far, but you can see in mid lane difference, he's allowing himself to be pushed in, but at the expense of Red Winter's health bar. Despite having Aftershock, he's taken some bad traits so far.
I mean, you can't really proc Aftershock if you don't get close enough, and when you're into a Syndra, you cannot get pretty much within half a screen's length of her, because she's just going to stun you up and heavily trade you out. It's a very difficult matchup once again. We were talking about the Aatrox in the mid lane, but because there is, of course, a mage in the top lane, you can just flex him there anyway.
Working out so far for Russia, I would say. They've got those CS numbers at least somewhat there. Bottom lane seems to be the only one struggling as they're getting shoved in.
Yeah, and there's also a Silk Road, if you take a look at it right now. A perfect path into the bottom lane for the Kazakhs. There's no real wards that spot him out for the side of Russia. If he decides to go through the Tri-Brush, he should have more or less information that they haven't warded it out, and they also don't have any of the trinkets in order to ward it out. It could be a very volatile situation, but already, the Skarner, he knows this, and he's trying to get some vision down for his team.
A curious choice to recall in vision, but he's got to know that Kaohsiung is not looking for anything aggressive at this precise moment.
It's sort of like a mind game. It's like, dude, just don't come here, all right?
Yeah.
Because, yeah, he knew that there was going to be such a vision dominance down into the bottom side because, of course, the bottom lane pushed in with the support of the Kazakhs. So the best thing that he could do was simply say, I'm around here. That means that you really shouldn't come here.
For sure, and of course that means the Skarner's now got his keystone available to him, Predator with those boosts that he just picked up. We'll see where he decides to do that first gank. It could be that bottom lane, as now they're trying to push their aggression back up and maybe open up that lane gate.
It could be, and these wards are expiring very quick, Superman. As soon as the one in the river brush goes, that's when Skarner can really go in. However, only level 4 is going to be a little bit difficult. Predator, sure, it does make you move fast, but a champion without any natural dashes still finds it very difficult to get into this lane, especially considering that Sweden know this, and they're allowing the lane to push back towards them.
Yeah, you can see this aggression in the bottom lane.
Oh,
Grand
missed.
Entrance actually just completely whiffs, and that means that Concussive Blow stacks up, but Skarner's here for that blood. 100 health remaining, and first blood goes the way of Russia.
That was sort of baited coming out from Temp Name and also Vada. Vada goes in, and instead of stepping backwards, Gentside steps forwards. That was just a smart game all around. Now they get priority on the bottom side. They can easily dominate this Dragon area or even go for a dive.
I would love to see this dive. They do walk over the ward, and man, Cookie's in so much trouble. Uses a dash, and he has flash available, uses it properly.
Oh, no.
Kaohsiung is here. This is going to be your trade kill, but no!
Oh, yes!
That's the Lovers duo showing up huge. Flash forward for Red Winter. He'll at least trade that kill, and then no minions to save their life.
Wow.
A
Good
fantastic flash from Tempnane will save his life for only a couple extra seconds, but that's a great turnaround from Sweden.
Way too aggressive. As soon as they go over the ward, Sweden knows exactly how to play that situation, bringing 4 people down into the bottom lane in response. Russia went way too greedy after getting the initial kill. They should have gone towards the Dragon. Now they could just be giving up an Infernal to the side of Sweden, which you really don't want to do into a Rise Lysandra composition.
Oh, absolutely not. It's definitely a mistake to go so aggressive when they did have the vision to see that Red Winter and Jungle 10 were following along through that jungle to watch for this dive. And of course, now they're
here he comes.
Could be a smite steal, though. Jungle 10
Oh,
also
no.
quite low. Unbreakable put up, down to 750. He does get the smite, flashes
Are you
over the
kidding
wall.
me?
That was fantastic.
That was ridiculous. Sweden held that Dragon for the longest time. They just said, you know what? Stop hitting the Dragon. Start hitting the Skarner. Eventually, we're going to take him down. Let's watch this again. Of course, it's going to be the dive. A flash coming out from Cookie to make sure that he gets out of the situation. You think the Vada's dead. He jumps out, but with the help of Lysandra, eventually he gets frozen down with the flash as well. Difference is here to try and save his ADC from that beautiful flash, by the way, but it's the Kaohsiung with the snipe. You never expect it.
No, you don't. And it was a little late on that scat of the week there. And that's the difference of having teleport versus cleanse. You saw Red Winter was able to show up so much sooner than difference, making the difference then for Sweden.
Yeah, the fact that they actually moved down, the fact that they knew to move down as soon as Russia moved over the ward, it's all of this vision game that's really helping them out and making them make the proactive decisions. They might not have a stronger composition, might not have stronger teamwork, I should say, but once you have the vision and the knowledge and the foresight, it doesn't really matter because everybody's more or less on the same page. Once again, you really have to heavily question the decisions that Russia's making in this game, because they know that they have a very late game scaling composition. However, they still went very aggro very early on, knowing that there's a TP on Lysandra, knowing that everybody could just collapse down into the bottom side. The saving choice would have been Dragon. And I'm not just saying that in hindsight, you know it coming into a weaker matchup.
Yeah, it was a curious choice to go for the Dragon so early with Death Timer so low. And you knew that Skarner had flash. You have to know that he didn't use it there in that engagement bottom lane. But now looking across the map, with so many summoner spells down, it seems so scary, and you can see the vision set up here for Russia because of this. They don't want to take any fights right now when they're down so many summoner spells.
Yeah, of course, and they sort of bit off a little bit more than they could chew. They're getting a taste for it. They know exactly why. It's a little bit too dangerous for them to go that aggressive. Wouldn't even be surprised if I saw Skarner just hard farm all the way until he got a couple of items before he makes his way back into lanes. Here's a gank.
Jungle 10 gets the isolation damage, but of course, World Ender is ticking. He'll be able to heal up underneath this turret if he even gets taken down, which he's going to be fine, and Stephanie's actually down to 100 health. They're going to think twice about trying that again.
Yeah, that was a little bit too aggressive. They knew for certain that Aatrox had his ultimate. Ryze continued to step forward, but you got to be wondering why, because even if you did get him down, you're popping his ulti, which is already on cooldown anyway, regardless. Ryze nearly gets taken down. It's just one more turret hit for him to die, so very, very aggressive stuff coming out for no real good reason coming out from Sweden. They know that they're on a timer a little bit because of the scaling that's coming out from Russia, but these plays that are unnecessarily aggressive are not going to get them to that breakpoint.
No, absolutely not, Preacher. And when you're on such a timer, like you mentioned, Preacher,
punching the clock.
Yeah, it becomes so much more difficult to have the patience and the discipline to make plays the way that they should. I'm looking at Realm Warp here as maybe what they could have used to bring the minions with them for an actual dive or at least pop World Ender. That was just a misplay overall, even with the vision control.
Here comes Vada, though. They might be trying to look into the mid lane. They don't know that Jungle 10 is around. I don't believe that Control Ward spotted him out. This is a very decisive play coming out from Russia. They do have vision dominance coming up to this side.
Yeah, and they're going to find Jungle 10. He's just going to hop over the wall, be totally fine. They do, of course, steal away the jungle camp, but because they're spotted out, I don't think that they can go for a mid lane dive anymore, especially when Difference is out of mana.
It's all the small victories, Superman. You take his big wolf, and he's just left with the small stakes, but he still gets a little bit of experience. I think that experience is really the name of the game coming out for these two junglers, because whoever gets the early level over his opponent obviously gets a bigger smite. We saw that smite made a huge difference around the dragon area, but more importantly, it means that they can just 1v1 more effectively. It means that they can join these lanes, and if it's a straight 3v3 or a straight 2v2, then they'd have a far superior advantage in terms of skill.
Yeah, and the gold very close, just a slight edge for Jungle 10 at this point just because of this assist gold. I don't imagine that it's going to make too much of a difference, especially when you've got such strong lanes here for Russia. I can only imagine that the Skarner's just looking, mouth watering for his next target.
He needs to be a little bit careful. I'm not going to say play fully defensive and just hard farm, but he needs to definitely watch where he's going. Stephanie does not know this. It's coming in.
So free, and they force the immediate flash. Great play by Stephanie to just say, no, I am not having any of this.
And it worked out so much better for the Ryze. I mean for Russia, because if you take a look, Ryze's flash, it's worth so much more than Aatrox's ultimate. What Aatrox's ultimate cooldown are we talking about? It's pretty much already up. So if they decide to go aggressive, bad luck, it's going to come straight back up. It kind of feels weird how you try for it, but you don't get it anyway. Difference.
Well, that's going to be the flash, but then they actually charm him before he can use the Frozen Tomb, and that means Jungle 10's going to try and trade 1-for-1 in this 2v1. One more auto tech will do it. He takes him down. It's a 1-for-1 overall, as Genside says, I'm here, and I'm ready. Stand behind Braum.
That was way too aggressive coming out from both these two mid laners. They wanted to go for the 1v1. They didn't know the other jungler was there. Once they both came in, it became a 2v2, but we saw exactly who was superior. Both of them actually losing out on that one. However, the flash being burnt from Vada could be very punishing. Rakan is one of the squishiest engages. There's the flash.
Yeah, the flash forward, and without the flash to answer, Stephanie's in a bad spot. Realm Warp is ticking. One more dude. He's only gained himself a few inches, and another auto attack is enough. He couldn't get far enough into Realm Warp to get out of dodge.
He did the best possible Happy Feet impersonation that he could, but it just was not good enough. There's a re-engage.
Backwards ult by Temp Name sets him up to be safe if Breadwinter wants to go for a dive. Ignite ticking from Fada. Nice root. That means the minions are gone, but man, Temp Name's just got no health bar to work with, and they'll get out. That's clean dive. 2-for-0 in the bottom side of the map.
You know as soon as that ultimate is popped that Lissandra could come in absolutely free. There's no way that you can avoid her ultimate. Didn't even really need to use it at the optimal location, but still used it anyway inside of that gank, picking up a double kill for her team. Now Sweden's finally pulling ahead. This is exactly what we wanted to see, Superman. We wanted to see Sweden come out ahead, and look at that. I mean, there's not a lot to say inside of this. It's just, you burned the flash earlier. There's no way that Ryze comes out. It's unfortunate that he gets pulled back with the chains. Very nice attempt to get out, but he's on the very far bottom left edge, so he appears very close to his opponents anyway, even after the TP.
Yeah, and I mean, when we're talking about Sweden and their job to defuse this ticking time bomb that is the late game composition of Russia, they seem to have at least got that one wire that at least stops the clock for a bit at this point.
Yeah, that looked like the flashiest play possible coming out from the Xayah to kill the minions as well as get the root to make sure that the turret's hitting enemy champions, but there's not a lot you can do when you don't get a lot of focus and a lot of assistance coming out from your jungler. You got to be asking the question, why exactly did Russia get such a strong bottom lane, but not actually manage to do anything with it? This is possibly the best scenario that you can get in terms of the bottom side of the map. Syndra can roam down. Syndra can make sure that she can get such an advantage, but time after time, Sweden's been pushing in bottom lane. It kind of looks as if they're just not using that pickup that they got for themselves inside of pick and ban, and that's certainly going to work against them, because Xayah Rakan, you can't be sleeping on that.
No, you cannot. They haven't really been able to use it as effectively, and wow, what? A solo kill. That's not something you see every day, as Difference just deletes out Redwinter.
Russian mathematics right over there. As soon as he knew that he got 100-0, went straight onto Lissandra. Lissandra was eating backwards, so there was no possible way, unless she flashed, that she could have actually got her Aftershock off with her E or her ultimate. Eventually just dies without popping the ulti either. That was just a heads-up cognizant play coming out from Difference.
What I just wanted to start talking about was how Sweden's lanes were just starting to look so much stronger than Russia, save perhaps the mid lane. And right then, Difference shows us that the Syndra pick came through for a specific purpose, to have the strong mid lane pushing forward, control that mid lane turret so that they're going to have the jungle control, and that Jungle 10 can't take this lead that he's got for himself and open up the map with it.
You're right, and mid lane already is pushed down to half HP. That means a lot right now, because it means as soon as it comes out in the bottom lane.
Yeah, and it's that bait once again where they started out. Jungle 10's a little bit early, or late, excuse me, coming in here, and I don't know if they actually can look for this.
The invisibility coming out from Jungle 10 meant that there was no pull back from the Skarner ulti. They might be looking towards a dive, but I doubt that any of them are tanky enough to really pull this off and also take turret damage.
And with only the casters remaining, you definitely want to back off here. Jungle 10 just saying, yeah, get off my turret. This belongs to Sweden. And they're going to hold on to it at least for another 30 seconds.
But look at how dangerous this is in the mid lane. Thank you, Mr. Cameraman. This turret is tantalizingly close to being killed. And that's pretty much just off of the solo kill alone coming out from Difference. If he manages to bust that one down for his team, then there's very little that's stopping Russia, because as soon as you get priority into the jungle, into the Rip Herald as well, it's not just one turret that falls, it's pretty much all of them.
And that will be first brick for Russia in the bottom lane. They finally whittle that down. And that means the gold lead swings slightly in their favor, as it was Sweden for a while there. Make that play on the bottom side and net yourself the first brick as well. It's a huge swing of gold back over to Russia.
You have to be worrying if you're the side of Sweden, because you have such a good early game, but already Russia's getting to the point where you look at the numbers in the mid lane.
Well, Difference just caught out. Not much to say there, as he just caught sleeping.
Yeah,
that's a lot of front-end damage from him.
Yeah, I mean, I think that he was window shopping, right?
Yeah.
He was just like, okay, I guess I'll just scatter him and then go straight back. Boom, gets one shot by the Kaohsiung as he jumps in. It's the most annoying feeling as a mid laner, but of course, you need to find your advantages wherever you can. Checking out the scoreboards and also the items that are currently picked up. This is very interesting coming out from Jungle 10. He is opting to go for the Black Cleaver, but he's going the tankiest route possible, getting the cooldown reduction in the kill gem and also getting the Ruby Crystal for himself. He might be a little bit scared about jumping in, because while he does have the assassination potential, he needs to make sure that he can survive in order to get a rotation of maybe 2 Qs.
And I find it so curious. As the flash forward, he's suppressed, he's going down charmed, and I was just about to say, the Mercury Treads missing might come up huge if he had built those instead, but look at the damage coming through. That's a triple root for Red Winter. This is that Aftershock Lissandra that showed up huge at Worlds, showing up huge here at IeSF, able to set so much and buy so much time for the damage dealers to come up huge.
I ship it. 10 Kaohsiung, you have to build it, you have to go for the full HP. Take a look at that. He managed to survive the ultimate coming out from Rakan and also from the Skarner as well, locking him down, but they don't have the damage to take his HP down to 0. What happens in the aftermath, if you check out the rest of the map, as they take down the turret, they come in and they actually manage to re-engage onto the enemy. Beautiful knock-up onto Temp Name as well to make sure that he's not DPSing down. And when Cookie joins the fight, you know it's over.
Yeah. And the culling to force the flash at the end is fantastic. And if I saw it correctly, yeah, it did net them the Herald that they're still waiting to use. They were able to break that top turret, and that'll hopefully translate to even more gold from that map.
It's assassin meta, baby. A 3 for 0 quickly becomes a 5 for 0 on Kaohsiung. So he can finally start building some AD as opposed to some HP. And you know it's scary when you say a Kaohsiung has built an inefficient stat for himself but came out ahead, and now he can start building the efficient one to really get himself onto the board. Like Cleaver immediately out from this back alone. You have to be really scared, because if you do not have sight on where exactly he's going and he kills you, that's a Rift Herald down, and you're going to be seeing a whole lot of turrets fall.
And the one thing Russia does have going for them is they have so much crowd control. Just a massive amount. And this is the one thing that I wanted to ask you about, Preacher, is the choice to go for Ninja Tabi on Jungle 10 as opposed to Mercury Treads. It seems that Xayah being set far behind doesn't seem to be as much of a threat, and we've had Tolkien on the top side be kind of sleeper on the map so far. Why the Ninja Tabi over Mercury Treads?
Well, I'll make a counter question for you, Superman. What exactly is the damage coming out? Is it going to be difference? No, he has to target either your mid laner or your ADC. If he uses his ultimate onto you, let's check it out.
And the quickness is the aggression here. Vada goes in, but he's just so low. Able to actually escape with 100 HP. The heal comes through. Not quite enough to keep him alive as a double kill for Cookie, and he's just cleaning up the fight. See if they can actually jump over the wall. So many flashes used. I mean, Vada's going to fall. Stephanie just coming up huge with that Realm Warp. Able to cover so much ground. His difference will fall as well. This is a Sweden showing up huge. And look, Baron spawning in 4 seconds. They might as well just go for it with all 5 members still alive.
Why not? There's nobody that can stop them. It's only Tokene that's up. But of course, his 3-hit combo on his Q is not enough to stop a 5-man onto this Baron. The fact that Sweden is hard abusing the fact that there is no vision down onto the bottom side is what's winning them this fight. Everybody goes in from Russia. They don't know that Lissandra is over on the other side of the wall. As soon as she comes over with her glacial path, she jumps in, she uses her E, and then her ultimate. And before you know it, it's a 5v5 where you did not anticipate the Lissandra to join. You are down in numbers, you are down in damage. You mentioned the fact that Russia has a whole lot of CC. What good is that CC when there's no damage to back it up? The only damage is coming out from difference, and once he's out of mana, it means that there's no damage coming out at all with the Ninja Tabi build.
And a fantastic Winter's Bite there from Genside. You have to give props to that Braum. Setting up this fight and countering the engage from Vada, meaning that they could turn that around so well.
Yeah, of course. Picking this up for themselves. And now we've got to take a look at how the game stands. We've got to step back, and we've got to say 5 for 13. How exactly does that work? And more importantly, is this a 1v2?
It might as well be. Jungle 10's so strong, and he's got Red Winter on his backside to help him out if need be. Man, there's just no ultimate available for Token. He's gone, and Jungle 10, he's just like 6-2. He's owning Summoner's Rift.
I am speechless. He abuses the fact that Aatrox uses ulti last team fight before he even gets it back up. Just goes to the solo kill, finds Skarner in the background. Any normal jungler would say, okay, that's a 1v2, maybe I shouldn't take it. Nah, he goes full forward, murders the Aatrox, and then gets out with the safety of the Lissandra. This is impressive.
It sure is, and they're looking to even up that turret score if they could take this down. Remember, Baron buff has so much more time left on it for them to siege up these turrets. If they can just defend, maybe the next wave will help them take down this turret. Now they got Herald used in the bottom lane as well. Oh, we talked about turrets and Champion Select just being a huge source of gold, and it's just one after another with Sweden getting so much. But wow, that's the quickness grand entrance into a suppress. Lissandra is the tankiest member of her team, just survives through everything. A double kill as Red Winter says, see ya, nerds, I am out. And they're just gonna wipe the floor with the Russian team. More turrets just falling left and right. They're gonna break the base, Preacher.
This is no way to play League of Legends when you hard draft for all CC, but you don't have any damage going into a composition that got so far ahead early. Even another charge. Do we see a 4th one onto the Nexus turret? I mean, I think this is just game.
Was there a champion there? Syndra just disappears, and they're gonna take this down. That'll be the Nexus for game 1 of this best of 3. GG to Sweden with a convincing mid-game performance.
The fact that they hard abused early game, the fact that they hard abused all of that vision advantage that they got for themselves. I mean, time and time again, it was either the Kaohsiung or the Lissandra jumping over a wall that was not warded out by the Russian team. The Russian team said, okay, by the maths, we should be able to win this, right? Wrong. Because of course somebody jumps across, and when it's uneven numbers, or even when it's even numbers when you're so far ahead, Sweden just pulls it out every single time.
Yeah, that was a fantastic performance. It blew my mind to see how far Kaohsiung got ahead.
Oh, yeah.
It seemed like a very aggressive pick, but that insta-lock from Champion Select showed us what I was hoping for. Confidence to come out from these players. And he showed up huge. Jungle 10 on that Kaohsiung.
That's the story of IeSF, Superman. The fact that all of these teams come in, they got their own unique picks because they say, this champion is very OP. Let's try every champion against it. Obviously, they have their confident counter picks, and it comes out strong. This is the what happens in Season 8 when you pick an assassin. It quickly goes from a 1-0 to a 3-0 to a 5-0, and if you're not keeping your eyes on the scoreboard, you say, hold on a second, where did Kaohsiung get all of these kills, and why is he one-shotting me?
Yeah, and it was so surprising to see the poor performance from Russia's bottom lane. They got the free Lovers duo on a fantastic early draft, but the Lucian Braum just hammered them into their turret for so long that they just were muted from the map.
Look, zero questions at all about the Xayah Rakan. If you can theoretically get it available on blue side for whatever reason, you take it.
Yeah.
Big question onto the Skarner though, because of course, early game is everything. Early game is king in the current meta. The fact that you would get a champion that scales, I mean, even if we're talking about scaling into the mid game before he can really have a huge impact, that just severely handicaps your team. One turret turns into many like we saw, and that is more or less what happened in this game.
And it wasn't like there weren't early game junglers available. Yes, we saw the Xin Zhao ban in the second round, Gragas from early on, but you had Lee Sin.
Yeah.
You had so many options available to have that early game pressure, and while Skarner is not useless early, he scales. That's what he's for, and it just did not work out for Russia.
Yeah, and more to the point, if you even walk it back one further step, you could have picked the jungle in your first rotation so that bans don't even come out to limit your pull, right? So even more questions coming out.
And I'll be curious to see how this evolves now, because it is a best of 3 in this series, where the draft might change for Russia to say, maybe we do need a more early game focused jungler, maybe even a really aggressive pick in the mid lane that can have that priority. Syndra's a great pick and definitely has, as we saw, solo kill potential, but maybe something that can roam a little bit better to help out what clearly is a weaker bot side of the map for them.
Of course. I mean, 1v1s are great and all, but if you can't actually get a Xayah Rakan ahead, you might be doing something wrong inside of your draft. So they definitely need to check out the, go back to the drawing board and make sure that they can get their bottom lane ahead once again, Superman. I liked everything about their draft. Mid lane, I'll give it a tick. I'll say that it was all right in terms of the Syndra, but yeah, the Skarner was really the hitting point for me that I was not a fan of.
See, I wouldn't mind them picking the Syndra again. I think there was a fantastic performance by Difference. Some of those scatters the week to even disengage some fights. Yeah. They just had too much chase on the side of Sweden to catch up once again. But he was hitting multi-man stuns and just saying, get out of my house, get out of my lane. Solo kill in the mid lane. Tells you all you need to know about this player. Look at the damage graph from Difference. The Syndra pick did come up huge. It was the only thing to rival that of Jungle 10's Kaohsiung.
Of course, but when you take a look at the other matchups, take a look at Jungle, it's nearly 10k ahead. I mean, once you get to numbers of that extraordinary proportion, you got to be asking yourself, did I really have that much of an impact? Wasn't the player, of course. It was the pick and ban. So back to the drawing board and try to really get that ahead. Another really huge thing that I want to touch on is the combined damage coming out from bottom lane. The Lucian Braum, of course, a very oppressive lane because of the way that Lucian and Braum's passive both work in tandem with each other. But there is no real scenario in which a Xayah Rakan should be able to lose. So yeah, back to the drawing board already.
Yeah, that is a lot of damage from the Syndra. AoE in the fights might work well for them if they want to go for that again. We'll get word on whether we do have a side swap, but I mean, it comes down to a misexecution, I think, on the idea behind Russia's draft and then the execution in the game. The Skarner pick just did not fit the composition. And while they did seem to have decent performances, especially in their solo lanes, I'll even say that the Aatrox is working well for the time being. Until it just erupted into Kaohsiung taking over the entire map.
The Aatrox pick worked until it didn't in terms of the pick and ban because, you know, obviously you say this guy has 3 Qs, this guy also has 2 Es to make sure that he can get into a team fight, but if you don't have any complementary CC to really catch him up, to really herd and shepherd the enemy team into one spot for him to knock them all up, it's all for naught, and that's what we saw last game. That champion either works or it doesn't with the composition, so with everything holistically, if you want to pick the Aatrox, go for it, but you might need a mid lane in order to shepherd the mid.
And I like that you point that out because when you pick it so early, and especially on blue side, you're not going to have the counter pick. And so I think it's a curious choice to choose an Aatrox that could otherwise maybe for a different team be flexed to mid, but maybe they just don't have that practice.
And look, already, we were talking about it before this game even started, right? That if you fall one game behind, then you're going to be backs to the wall.
Yeah.
Already, Russia backs to the wall. Let's see what they pick out because nobody puts Bear into a corner.
No, not at all. So we're going to take a short break, but when we come back, we'll have game 2 of this best of 3 between Sweden and Russia. Don't go anywhere.
那时候第一弹了，这么正面过来，这个双盲留住第3左，再闪现，不过他跑不掉瑞空，也被涌动直接炸水的进攻。有了，要打瑞空进去，布朗姆再随机开大，断了这个俄罗斯的后路，右边的卡要倒了，地场地到底先到了，梅兹 TP 很久，终于来了，在那边看戏等人，坐车要来，不过在坐车的同时，队友已经收了2个人，入圈杀不掉，去追击小龙子怎么办？大家纷纷上去，但后续雷之闪闪现狙要杀出瑞空，你别跑，直接杀掉，看着看着，还是放弃吧。
哎，没有，
还是要打，
没有，他不放弃，他硬要了。
可是这就是这个瑞空跟蝎子的搭配，伤害不太够的，反正被反打，第3个定情2人拿下了大 OK， 布拉姆也收下一个人头，厄萨斯虽然想在里面打出这个杨过的刀法，但没有。
Come on back. Again, we are here live from Kaohsiung City in Taipei, and I gotta say, this arena is hype.
I mean, it's pretty big. It was really full yesterday and today. I can only imagine what the finals can bring, but we are getting ahead of ourselves once again, like we usually do on this broadcast, Superman. First of all, we got to conclude this best of 3.
Yeah, I mean, we are just finished a first game of this series between Sweden and Russia, and that performance by Sweden to come back off of an early back foot and then just slam through that mid game onto Russia.
I mean, that was a little bit ridiculous to see. It kind of looked like they were scattering the weak, but scattering on the other side. It was actually Russia that was moving all over the place, running around maybe like headless chickens, which really puts my theory to bed when I said last year they were very superior in terms of the communication. Of course, every single year these teams make minor adjustments, but this might have been the one that accidentally slayed the golden egg, right?
It seems to be the case because with all their team fight prowess from last year, we would have expected better from Russia this year, whereas in this, I mean, it's the first game we've seen of them here on broadcast, but their performance did not look good. They didn't really seem to be as cohesive, and especially when you get Lovers Duo in the bottom lane, you ought to have cohesion. You better be on the same page, not like what we saw last game.
No, unfortunately not. And when you come into this new pick and ban, it has to be revamped, and the key word for Russia is early, early, early.
Yes.
You need to make sure that you focus on the early game. We harped on it a little bit before when we were talking about the late game jungle in the Skarner pickup. We won't talk about it too much. Just make sure that they can get something that can have an early impact. Another huge thing that we need to touch on is also enabling, because while there is a lot of CC coming out from their team, it's skill shots, and if you don't herd them into the correct place, there's no way that you can get that massive wombo combo, so they need to get that synergy to make sure that they can get that CC off.
Yeah, and when it comes to the jungle, we wanted to say, it wasn't really so much a performance problem as it was just the draft. No, and that's why I think it's an easy fix if Russia can just decide, as you said, early, early, early. Get a pick in there, especially in the jungle, that'll help them get that early aggression rolling.
Yeah, of course. So I'm very curious as to see just what they change up, especially in terms of bans as well. Look, I'd be very surprised if that Kaohsiung was actually let through, because we were talking about carrying before, and that guy pretty much put the entire team on his back before anybody could even realize.
Indeed, and you can see those larger picks and those small bands on your screen at the bottom. And you can see a lot of those same bands coming through very quickly here. I will be curious to see, like you just said, Preacher, if the Kaohsiung draws a ban away from Jungle 10, or if he's going to snag it again, or even just leave it open because he's got something else up his sleeve and he doesn't want to rely on a crutch pick like that.
I mean, it could just be the matchup here, Superman. Another huge thing to note, of course, is that Sweden has switched over to the blue side, whereas Russia is now on the red side. Counter picks available for both the solo lanes of Russia could provide a plethora of opportunities. I'm still waiting out on the last ban. If it's not either of the Lovers Duos, you know that Huracan has to be a first pick.
I would imagine that that might come through, but I'm not seeing an answer here in the first few bans to deal with what Russia could take in the first round. Perhaps the Syndra for difference, who was the highest damage to champions in the entire game despite them losing.
Yeah, I mean, that's really the double-edged sword of going onto red side, right?
Yeah.
You sort of want to counterpick your mid lane, but you say, I already got such a good failsafe in the Syndra. I can pick it into Alessandra. It's pretty much more or less blind, and now Russia on the back foot sort of is obligatory that they pick up the Xayah in order to split up the duo, and maybe even pick themselves up something very early on, like, for instance, the Alistar, which is let through. Now, that is something that I definitely need to talk about. Alistar was more or less 100% pick ban. Now that he's not banned, of course, you see him on the Rift.
There's a nice steal away from Russia. Gives them that early game advantage in the bottom lane. Also, the scaling of Alistar is fantastic. But really, allowing them to have such a strong bottom side again, maybe it's no problem for Sweden, because Sweden says, hey, we gave you Lover's Duel last time and you couldn't do anything with it. So sure, have the Xayah, have the Alistar, we're going to win with our solo lanes and our jungler just smashing the map.
And this is much less synergy coming out from the side of Sweden, the Lucian and the Rakan, but you know, I'm laughing. You hear me chuckling, but inside, I'm a little bit worried for Russia because the Kaohsiung instantly, without a second thought, is locked in.
Yeah, very worried. Jungle 10 with the insane performance on Kaohsiung's last game, taking 1v2s even into the mid game and coming out ahead. That's just fantastic from him. But the Ornn, you and I have talked about this before.
Yeah, certainly. In Worlds, he was the most highest win rate champion that had more than a trivial amount of games. He had 8 games and 7 wins on that champion. That is ridiculous. You also have to think about the fact that he just wasn't picked from quarters onwards. He was only a group stage pick, which begs the question, why exactly is that? Because there were no prevalent champions that came out against him. Of course, Irelia is banned away on the side of Sweden. Nothing can really break his shield. I have theorized a little bit that Fiora is very good right now because she's had a lot of buffs, a small one on 8.22 as well. However, that's up to Sweden to see if they want to take that damage dealer, which is always a risk in the top lane.
I wouldn't mind them throwing down the gauntlet, so to speak, with Jungle 10 getting the Kha'Zix again. Having a hyper-aggressive top laner like a Fiora would be fantastic to see. But,
yeah,
you know,
I mean, it just works out so well.
And with the Ornn pick in particular, they do leave themselves open to some counter picks like the Fiora that you mentioned, or more aggressive top laners that might be able to punish him. Even a GP could come through and farm that out and just say, Sweden says, look, we've got our late game insurance in the top lane and so much damage on the bottom side of the map.
All right, you might be going a little bit overboard with that GP Superman. I wouldn't be expecting that so far early on, but hey, this is exactly what we needed.
Yeah, this is that pick we were saying. Russia needs that early game jungle that can maybe enable like a top lane pick like the Ornn. They could definitely lock down any sort of, even a carry, and just delete them from the map.
And look, Russians are always known to be very mechanical. You watch their league and you know for certain that these players are popping off. Lee Sin is, of course, the standard favorite coming out for them. I'm a little bit surprised that they actually opt into the LeBlanc in this situation. Of course, the Lissandra is banned away for Sweden, but we've seen a lot of success coming out from control mid laners, not so much assassins. We do know that assassins do flourish on this patch, but this is just unknown all around. I guess you do have the option to, of course, flex your picks around and to see just what works for your team when you are a win ahead.
What is this?
Hello?
Illaoi picked for the top lane. I mean, that's definitely the kind of punishing pick that can deal with the Ornn, and I say deal with lightly because that's a punishing matchup, but that's so scary to pick that into a Lee Sin.
I mean, I have no words. Of course, you take a look at Illaoi and you say that this is going to be a ridiculous matchup. She wins into anybody without any dashes, and Ornn has less than no dashes because even though he has one, it takes forever to ramp up. It allows Illaoi to hit her E very, very easily, and that's pretty much the name of the game. Once you rip out his soul, you just win for the next 30 seconds aside of the lane.
Where is the synergy, though, for Sweden's composition? I'm just not seeing it.
You win.
It seems it's win lane, win game, and that's all they've got going for them.
Look, you're allowed to experiment a little. You're allowed to go for the LeBlanc picks and say, you know what, I think that we're just going to win this mid lane outright by ourselves. Because if it doesn't work out, worst case scenario, you're a 1-for-1 and you could just go back to default, back to standard, back to what you knew worked from game number 1. And best case scenario, you've shown that you could do pretty much everything, which is a scary thing for the rest of the teams getting out of groups.
That's for certain. I mean, Sweden did put on a fantastic performance in game 1. So much of a stomp that it's, they definitely have the leeway to just try a few things out and see what works for them and what they might be able to bring to the next stage of the tournament.
I mean, the prevailing theory is that you only change things when you lose because, of course, the impetus is on you to really bring it back to victory. But when you change things when you're ahead, that is actually a very good thing because it instills fear into your enemies. And you might be saying, yeah, but you're also giving away these special pocket picks for people to know to ban. That is a good thing. When you have multiple champions that your enemies need to ban, they have decision anxiety, which they say, I don't know which ones to do because we only get 3 in the first rotation.
Yeah, it can be very difficult. One thing that's definitely going the way of Russia, though, is we mentioned how last year's teamfight prowess that they brought to the tournament came up huge for them before. Their composition does precisely that.
Oh yeah, so we have to see if they can finally swing it back. There were a lot of extraneous circumstances that brought them behind. Let's see if they happen once again in game number 2.
Yeah, here we are onto Summoner's Rift, loading on in, and we'll see where these junglers decide to put their pressure early, because we said for Russia, it has to come down to early game pressure. The Skarner did not do that for them in game 1, but now with the Lee Sin and the mechanics to play it, you can only imagine that drawing first, damage too,
he did
throwing
it.
down the gauntlet.
He landed his Q, GG/FF, he's already won the game, but in all honesty, Jungle 10, this guy, you know that he doesn't actually go that aggro. You take a look at his scoreboard from last game, and you would say this Kaohsiung has been all over the map before he's even had lunch, right? That's not actually the scenario. He makes sure that he gets his warriors before anything else. And look, if he doesn't actually manage to get to his warrior, which Lee Sin can actually intercept and stop him from doing, then he might not have the same impact that we saw him have in the first game.
Absolutely the case. Some cheeky trades around with the red card from Difference, but this Twisted Fate is a pick that we haven't touched on yet, Preacher, and it can actually, I think, be the linchpin in the composition here for Russia to help them get to the mid game where they can then team fight.
Of course, the TF Ultimate has the same cast time that it always did. TP was the one that got nerfed to 4.5 seconds, but Twisted Fate still comes in massive with his ultimate. Pair that with an Alistar or even an Ornn on the top side of the map. The lockdown is enough for him to come through, and with a gold card to boot, the guy's just locked down, and that should theoretically be enough damage for anybody to pick off either of the two side lanes. But, you know, if anywhere was somewhere that TF should be focusing, it should be the bottom lane.
I agree with that statement. I mean, we've got the Alistar that can flash Pulverize, and the Xayah, one of those few AD carries that brings her own crowd control to a fight. And if Difference can get them in that long lane and set up the bottom lane for success, that'll help the confidence of Russia too, I think, because they didn't really have a great performance in the bot side of the map last game.
Well, that's the story of Xayah as well. She does have ZC, which is very unique for an ADC, but it takes a lot of time to set up before she can actually use it. So if there were an extra gold card that was just cheekily put down into the bottom lane by a certain somebody on the team, so that could definitely set them up for success. It has to be up to him to get to level 6, though. We didn't mention the fact that he's into a LeBlanc. TF into LeBlanc is super punishing for the TF side because there is not a lot that he can do. If LeBlanc wants to trade, she's going to trade, and he doesn't have a lot of say in it.
Indeed. The early boots choice for Difference is curious to me. It definitely gives him a little bit more survivability as far as this goes, but Vata's here. He doesn't even have to flash into the gold guard. Nice choice to use the Ignite early before any additional healing could come through, but not able to find enough damage. It's just level 2.
That is a very standard pickup coming out from TF. It was very smart of Vata to come up to give him the breathing room that he needed. It's sort of like one hand washing the other. If I allow him to go, then of course he can come straight back towards our side. Double the ignites being burned down as well, which is a little bit of a miscommunication.
Yeah.
I think they were going for damage more than for the synergy, but the point that you talked about was the boots. I think boots are very standard for TF because he needs to move around a lot in order to get his gold card down onto the enemies, and also the fact that he doesn't really need the regen coming out from Doran's ring because he already has his blue card. TF's main stat that he wants to prioritize is actually movement speed. He wants to get that over AP, and if he can get that very early on, he can just be running people down with gold cards for days.
That is the hope, at least. And now with that early aggression into mid lane and Red Winter not having a flash, it means he has to be a little bit safer in terms of punish. But nice chain connects, roots him into place. The gold card to keep the Kaohsiung's aggression away, but he's just going to walk forward. Nice trading of the tower aggro. They're just going to get that kill for somewhat free. Oh my goodness! That thread of the needle, not actually enough damage. Dark Harvest only shows up there for Jungle 10.
Man, that was insane. I mean, he landed the Q and then he backed out straight away. I think that was the better choice overall.
It's a big wave.
Say, that was just really good synergy coming out from the mid and also the jungle of Sweden.
Yeah,
they went
fantastic.
into the mid lane and they managed to pick that one up for themselves, even taking up the turret if we get a cheeky replay of it. If not, it's all good. It was the fact that LeBlanc was tanky it and she actually stood within turret range to make sure that Jungle 10 gets that extra health. Doesn't even need to go back, he just goes straight to farming.
I like that choice. I'm going to stack that extra gold up. In this top lane, I mean, talk to me about this. 200 health remaining under his turret. He doesn't have a jungler to help him. He has his flash. But I got to say, when you're down 2 waves already in underneath your turret.
This is going to be a dive.
Wow, Test of Spirit comes out huge, and a nice choice to back away from Token instead of trying to go aggressive. But he's got to keep dodging these tentacles or he could still fall underneath the turret. But in the bottom lane, they find the Lee Sin out of position, and with Jungle 10 on the back foot, he's just out for blood. Vada will be the next. A double kill for Genside, and Tempname is the next one in their sights. Flash for flash, and Tempname will get out of dodge.
Hold on a second, that was actually 2v3 coming out from Sweden's side because they killed Lee Sin before Kaohsiung went anywhere near in order to make a difference in that fight. I can't believe the fact that an early game Lee Sin could have been caught out in a situation like that, having the ability to ward jump onto his trinket as well, but losing it around is definitely something that you do not want on this early game champ. We check it out. He actually wants to find this, and they get it onto Lucian, but they turn it around, and there's no damage coming out from Tempname. The Ignite taking down Lee Sin before he can even do anything. Maybe should have got another auto attack in or two, but nothing really counts on this side because Russia, they're getting eviscerated by Sweden on the bottom side.
Yeah, it seemed like a little bit of a miscommunication. They did see the Lee Sin come through on that ward, and then they decided to take that fight with the aggressive flash from Fada, but the damage wasn't there, as you said, to follow it up. So a little bit of a misplay on the bottom side means Russia's down 3 kills already. We mentioned an early gold lead could really do it for either of these teams, and Sweden's the one that's very comfortable in their 1-game lead in this series.
Yeah, and I think that the real downside is the fact that you also picked the Lee Sin. Nobody likes to see a 0-1-0 Lee Sin, but here we are on the map right now, Superman. He's only got a couple of longies to his name as opposed to the fully built jungle item nearly coming out for the side of Kaohsiung. On his next back, he should be able to get it, and that power spike available over Lee Sin. Warriors is such a huge advantage. I mean, in a 1v1 scenario, I would have given it over to Lee Sin, but Kaohsiung's with a 1-0-1. Checking out the gold lead. Nah, I don't think that's going to happen.
No. And look at this topside gold lead. 400 gold without a single kill there. And that's just almost double CS. And the Kleptomancy coming in huge. But this is a curious roam here by Vada. Kind of caught out by 3 members on his side of the jungle.
Oh, no.
Nice choice to get the chains. The ethereal chains locked down. Genside's knockup is true. And that'll be a free kill as Jungle 10 says, excuse me, Summoner's Rift still belongs to the Kazakhs.
What was that? Sure, you know that Lee Sin is 0-1, but he read where he was, and he's gone for top.
He's just saying, back off from top lane, it belongs to me too, but watch how this happened.
Yeah, this is ridiculous. He's going for the Lee Sin. Lee Sin has no idea that he's there. Pops the ultimate for a little bit of this, the stealth, and that was just 100-0 with the red smite as well. I mean, there was literally no counterplay available.
Yeah, no isolation damage either. That's just so much damage from the Kazakhs, able to find him out while he's farming in the jungle. But look, Stephanie, top lane, making this work for himself. He doesn't need Jungle 10 on the top side. This just opened up so many plays available to Sweden because Jungle 10 doesn't have to show up top side at all. First brick, and now that gold lead has got to be in the neighborhood of 1,000 plus in favor of Stephanie on the top side of the map.
Yeah, and this is just so threatening. This is more or less the same situation that Russia found themselves in the bottom lane.
Tempname able to kind of back himself out. No flash, no heal. He cannot go. This is so greedy to look forward, but this is going to be a 4v2, and that Genside's out of position. He'll go down. That's Tiep picking his first kill of the game. He wants to complete that row as soon as possible.
Yeah, but look, Difference's ultimate is on such a long cooldown, Superman. He's going to get a kill more or less every single time he has that up available, but how often is that going to be? If he's not rushing cooldown reduction, then it's going to take a very long time. Huge fan of the decision that Russia's making, as opposed to first game, they use the advantage to get a dragon, as opposed to go aggressive into the enemy jungle, but Jungle 10 is right around, and he has to have an inkling that this is happening.
Yeah, I mean, I'll kill you on your last camp. How about I kill you at the dragon? I've got 2 levels on you to boot, so they're just going to steal this away. Seems like Russia didn't learn from their cheeky steal from game 1, because they're going to get that first stealing away over here to Sweden, so that's going to be fantastic. Mountain Drake picked up. The next one's going to be Ocean. Not really helping with the laning phase, but speaking of laning phase, what is top lane at this point, Preacher?
It is a Klepto Illaoi beating an Ornn. Look, even if she forgot to do any runes, literally 0 runes, she would be winning this lane. So the fact that she's getting free gold just by smacking the clone coming out from the Ornn means that this gold lead is starting to get so much more insurmountable. It's not just CS, it's not just the turrets, it is also the keystone. So you got to keep that in mind. This Illaoi is going to be more or less at 2 items before Ornn even gets to his first.
Vada's flash is almost back off cooldown, and they have Lee Sin in the wings, channeling a recall, but you can only imagine he's going to stick around. Nope. He's going to complete that and look to maybe help out the top lane that's just struggling so hard. Almost a double CS lead still in the top lane. The Kleptomancy gold to boot.
Yeah, but this is definitely not worth, because if you help out top lane, you expect the Ornn to use his ulti in the mid lane.
Yeah, Ethereal Chains connects yet again. Just Red Winter has sights on whatever target he chooses, and top lane as well, just going super aggressive.
Oh, no.
How does he land that every time? Tolkien lucky he's got a shield in his kit, because he just barely gets out alive.
And that is exactly what we were talking about. Lee Sin, he can't even be helping the top side, because if he goes, you assume that there has to be an ultimate use from the Ornn. You never want to burn it, because it is such a long cooldown. You want to be able to TP to either mid or bot, and then use it on multi-man. You do not want to use it on 1v1.
Oh, deja vu, Preacher, as he just dies near that red buff. Yet again, Tempnane finally gets his summoner spells off cooldown, but he has to feel just to get away. Another turret falls to the top side as Vada says, I'm happy I have this ultimate.
Yep, that definitely gets him out to safety. But at this point, it doesn't even matter about the 2v2s, because we're talking about the holistic map. A 3-0-2 Kaohsiung, you got to keep your eye on that scoreboard. Usually you don't, but you got to say how much work this guy is doing. He's going once again for his tanky route into the Black Cleaver as opposed to the damage route. And since last game, I've been converted. I think that I'm a huge fan of that.
I like it so far. I mean, look, this is 7-1, almost 4-0 in turrets, Preacher. The gold lead now ballooning to a massive advantage, and they just have full control. They haven't even bothered going for the Herald, but this is a cheeky play. Lee Sin showing up. Remember, last time he came ahead of his team, they didn't have the damage for this. Lee Sin just close, and he's going to be down if he gets one more auto attack in. Remember, Tempnane does not have heal available to him, and why are you taking these fights, Russia? I know you have to try something, but learn from your mistakes, please.
Yeah, they're going for very desperate plays in order to try and pick up a little bit of gold on the map. Not too certain why he was going onto the Rakan. There was no play available except to W right onto where Lee Sin was going to Q him. But look, while all of this was happening, Jungle 10, he is making an absolute mockery of the Russian side. He's picking up everything available on the map, and when there are no kills available, he's even picking up the Rift Herald. So far in the tournament, out of all broadcaster games that we've seen, whoever gets a Rift Herald clearly wins the game, and whoever gets a Rift Herald is the one who gets early kills.
This could be crazy if Stephanie can do it with the massive gold lead. Call of the Forge God, nicely dodged there by the stopwatch that's now broken. One more smack gets us so much more healing. Finally, they get the Ignite to tick as Vada gets that Summoner spell to come in.
Oh, no.
Super handy, but top side of the map, they're just going to break the base. Question mark pings go down as Russia's like, what do we do about this? They could possibly even take the inhibitor off of this, not just the turret.
Yeah, they probably are, Superman. It's not even 15 minutes into the game. You literally cannot surrender, and they could potentially get an inhibitor. Jungle 10, he needs to get out of here.
Nice flash forward to get that auto attack. Jungle 10 down to half HP. And that actually is a turnaround kill with the red smite. Turns around. He's actually going to be shut down. That's a huge boost. 750 gold. TP comes through. The quickness means they'll pick off the AD carry as Tempnane's summoner spells were no longer available. But now with 4 members here, Sweden says, let's take the base. They're going to push forward. Curious choice, I would say, for them not to take this inhibitor, but instead go for the tier 2 mid.
I mean, inhibitors don't give you gold, Superman, but turrets do, and that's exactly what they want to balloon out. The theory with inhibitors is that if you take one down and you don't actually capitalize the rest of the map, the fact that minions naturally push towards your enemy donates them about 2,000 gold, which puts them back into the game. So the fact that these guys are choosing to bust down these turrets means that they're taking the mathematical route out. They want to make sure that they're getting as much gold for themselves while simultaneously denying it from the enemy. And watch this, while Rift Herald is smacking away, they all go onto Jungle 10, but with the red smite available onto Vada, that was 1 Q and 1 auto. I mean, is there a lot to say about that scenario? Jungle 10 eventually gets taken down, but the fact that he can kill an Alistar in his ultimate just from a simple combo and his smite is a little bit too ridiculous to see. And once the teleport comes out from Stephanie as well, we already know that this Illaoi was so far ahead, and there's not a lot that the Ornn can do, even in a 1v1, let alone against the rest of the team.
Yeah, this is looking to be a fantastic performance once again by Sweden. They were able to win in a very convincing style for game 1. You can only imagine that they're ready to close this out, perhaps sub 25 minutes again. I mean, they broke the base around the 20-minute mark last time with Baron buff, but this time, the naked inhibitor top lane, they could choose to end through that lane whenever they so choose, if they just want to group up. But right now, why not do this 1-3-1 or 4-1 split? Using top lane is just kind of this crutch that Russia just has to be leaning on to make sure that they don't lose their base this early.
I'll see your 1-3-1. I'll raise it to a 1-2-1 where Kaohsiung is just getting random kills wherever he goes already in the bottom side.
Yeah, Stephanie just looking for that harass, and you mentioned it. Kaohsiung's looking for those kills wherever he wants. Jungle 10 with his 6th kill of the game.
Meanwhile, everybody else on the side of Sweden is pushing into the mid lane. This is surgical coming out from this squad, and they just completely delete him there.
Yeah, it's gone, and they're going to get another turret bottom lane, and they're looking for continued aggression. Nice ward hop to just push in the Rakan, but why go for that target, and you're just going to give your life for it? This Lee Sin pick has not been working out well for them at all.
No, and take a look at this. It's also the Alistar. You think that this is such a good pickup, but when there is so much assassination potential and you haven't reached your power spikes, he is sitting on pretty much nothing but some Moby boots, and that is just not helping out the rest of his team. Now, this is the point at which they even want to close out the game. If they don't even finish off the Nexus from here, they can get 3 inhibitors, they can back off. They can't get Baron because that's in 4 minutes, but man, they can do whatever else they want.
I mean, why not? If they still have the Herald at this point, they might get the dance out of it too, as they take the 2nd inhibitor, and they're definitely going to back off instead of going for that 3rd. They don't want to throw this lead that they have accrued for themselves. 15,000 gold lead is nothing to scoff at 16 minutes.
And the smartest thing that they could have done is actually take the bottom side inhibitor. If you take the top side, it naturally forces everybody in Russia to play towards the top side. But if you take the bottom side, you're inevitably opening up the Baron for your team when everybody else is defending the other side of the map. But, you know, when we talk about Barons and inhibitors, usually the Baron is up. And we still got 3.5 minutes, so yeah, this is as confusing to me as it is to them. You know, they practice this in so many scrims. They come out into the live stage, they okay, so we got the bottom inhib, we go to Baron, right? And everybody's like, no.
I can't. There's nothing there to take. The big
Where
purple
is
worm.
it?
Yeah, it's
Where
still
is it?
underneath Summoner's Rift, crawling around, just waiting for its time to shine. But right now, the shining light is this 10-stack Machias Red Winter, who's deathless so far. And I want to see if that can get to 20.
I mean, this guy's just hunting around. Oh, no. He cancels the majority of the gold card as well. That is the matchup that you hate to see with the LeBlanc assassination potential. This is just a fiesta all around. I think that Stephanie can win with the rest 4ing top lane.
Yeah, and there is the nice play from the Lee Sin, but he can't quite get Dragon's Rage, and then he's out of position again as the backside 80 carries just deleted. Tempnate had nowhere to go. That's a double kill for Cookie as well. They're just cleaning house. It's over. The cheeky play flashing around misses the Testosphere, and they're just having fun on stage now. They know it's over. Russia's giving out the GG dances, and I gotta say, Sweden just looks fantastic.
And look, before 20 minutes time, what more can you say? If you're on the same bracket as Sweden, or if you're even on the other side looking to beat them into the finals, this is a formidable opponent.
Yeah, fantastic play from Sweden. Congratulations to them. They're going to take the quick 2-0 in this series, moving them on to quarterfinals.
Congratulations to everybody on the team, and you can see they're not even celebrating that hard. They know that this is early days for them in the tournament. They've got so much more to prove, and when you're watching the reactions of these guys, and they just say, you know what, this is standard. We came here for business. We didn't come here for fun, and we are just executing on everything that we want to do. That instills fear into you.
Yeah, I mean, that is what this tournament's all about, is showing up to get some competitive experience on a massive stage like this. But you can see the sportsmanship there, all smiles as these teams say, GG's, well played to us all. And I mean, the sportsmanship here, even in, you mentioned meeting players at breakfast and things like that, everybody's all smiles saying, we're here to compete, but we're also here to make friends from all around the world.
Of course, and those are the connections that you want. This is really what happens when you collide with the rest of the world. You know, we have metas evolving in all of the different servers, but once you split them up into countries as well, that's where you get to see the uniqueness. The Kaohsiung's coming out from Sweden. I mean, I'm going to be honest with you right here, Superman. If that's not banned in literally every other game against Sweden from this point onwards, then
yeah,
I would be very surprised.
It better be banned. Maybe even like the Rengar that we saw from Chinese Taipei, is that pocket pick. When you can bring something out like that, especially an assassin that'll just show up so huge, you kind of have to take that away.
And this is also doubly scary because now Sweden's proved that they can do it on blue side and red side alike. The fact that they can outdraft their opponents and somehow even get counter picks on blue side as well. I mean, what more can you say about that? These guys, they're drafting geniuses. They manage to make sure that their players get the advantage they need. And then you just put all of the faith into the players, right? You make sure that they just execute exactly the way that they need to. And if they do, there's not a lot that can stop them.
Yeah, and I gotta say, Russia did precisely what we asked of them. Even though they didn't bring out the win for Game 2, they definitely adjusted the draft, adjusted their playstyle, and tried to go for those early games. They just got outplayed.
They need to be happy with their performance at this tournament. I mean, the fact that they adapted, the fact that they knew exactly what they needed to change, that was a step upwards, right? If you keep on bashing your head into a brick wall, that's not what we like to see. But all of these countries coming together, it only helps everybody else out.
Yeah, and that makes me all the more excited for matchups to come, because with yesterday's performance being such a dominant one, and then these drafts evolving as they did throughout the series, there's only going to be more excitement here in Kaohsiung. That'll do it for us here from the English broadcast of IeSF World Championship. Join us tomorrow for more League of Legends action. Until then.
卡利就到了，
而且好像还没完呢。
往前跳，晕到球被缓速没有闪现，直接收下人头。差有闪但不想交，闪现直接逼闪，
一直狂洗狂洗。
捉到牛了，三的包包，
三夹之内，
哇，温体牛准备上桌啊！这是谁要吃呢？啊，他已经有在帮下路了，下路应该是最没事的。闪现过去砍，扑攻3下。这一波的进攻，那还是宣告无效。下方的一个位置，4个人包总可以了吧？
来，就是你了，
牛过来，
回血，
助手已经出来了，再加金人。 拖了4个人的时间，反正要打，有可能要倒，赶紧走了。幸好7等啊，7等可能比较强。
你也记得是7等，是不是？
上面只有2个人啊，不过等级差很多的，闪现过去蛮牛之力留住了，反正不过没有歼第1次的牛，
死了，
直接死。各位朋友回身收嘛，还是没有被收到，继续的打但是被收掉。勒布朗在那边等待，闪现过去要踩凯了个坑，回身再踩，不要说踩。瑞空反身控制老公，控制老婆，老婆倒下，瑞空反身再控制，把2给留住，右边的位置路线已经滑了进来，就把2给抽掉。这一波打的团战是又快又狠，支援瞬间都到了，5人瑞典人都到场。瑞空就冲出来，李信漂亮这一踢。 踢了一个瑞空，瑞空还会飞啊！勒布朗拿了一个 W， 李信龙华路线准备进场，卡莉斯也已经赶到，牛在前面要成为了一个牛排、羊排、牛排接连上桌啊！哇，这个豪华。